I never thought draining my pool would cause this much trouble until my HOA Karen came knocking. It all started on a sunny afternoon when I decided it was time to give my pool a much-needed clean. But little did I know, this simple task would escalate into a full-blown neighborhood drama. It didn't take long for Mrs. Thompson, the ever-watchful HOA president, to spot the water flowing from my property. Next thing I know, I get a stern letter accusing me of violating HOA rules. She claimed I was draining my pool in a way that could cause damage to the neighborhood. But I was sure I was following all the proper steps, so I decided to investigate. As I looked closer, something wasn't adding up. Why was she so obsessed with my pool? Turns out, what she didn't know was that her own pipes had a much bigger problem. What I uncovered was jaw-dropping. Her water lines were illegally connected in a way that could have serious consequences for the entire block. Now I had a decision to make. Do I stay quiet or confront her with the truth? Stay tuned, because what happens next could change everything. At first, I thought it was just a petty complaint. Mrs. Thompson had always been a stickler for rules, but this seemed excessive. Draining my pool wasn't harming anyone, and I checked everything with the city beforehand. Still, the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about some water flowing onto the street. It felt personal. A couple of days later, I decided to pay Mrs. Thompson a visit to get some answers. I knocked on her door, and when she opened it, I could see the frustration in her eyes. She didn't even let me speak before launching into another tirade about how my pool was a hazard to the community. I calmly explained that I was following all the regulations, but she wasn't listening. Her focus was solely on finding something to accuse me of, no matter what. That's when I noticed it, something odd in her backyard. The pipes near her garden were sticking out at weird angles, clearly not installed by a professional. My curiosity got the best of me, so I decided to dig deeper. It wasn't long before I discovered that those pipes didn't just lead to her house. They connected in a way that was completely illegal. What could this mean? Was she covering something up, or had she been getting away with it for years? I had to find out. As I stood in her backyard, staring at those strange pipes, my mind raced. I had seen enough to know something wasn't right, but I had no idea what to do next. Part of me wanted to confront her right there, but I knew better than to go in all guns blazing. Mrs. Thompson wasn't just some neighbor. She held power in this community. The HOA president could make life miserable if she wanted to. Instead, I decided to be careful, to watch and learn. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention. I'd drive by her house, pretending to be casual, but really I was trying to see how often those pipes were being used. I've also began talking to a few neighbors who seemed as confused as I was. None of them had ever questioned Mrs. Thompson's authority. It was like she ruled the neighborhood with an iron fist, and everyone just followed along. Then, one evening, I overheard a conversation while walking my dog. Two neighbors were talking about a sudden, unexplained water bill hike. They didn't have any proof, but they suspected something shady was going on. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Mrs. Thompson's strange setup with the pipes might not just be about her yard, it could affect the whole block. My gut told me I was onto something big, but I needed proof. So I started digging deeper, making quiet inquiries about her water usage, trying to connect the dots. But each time I thought I was close to the truth, something, or someone, would stop me. It was clear that Mrs. Thompson wasn't just going to let this slide, and with every step I took, I could feel the tension building. The more I dug, the more the mystery deepened. I started to notice strange things happening around Mrs. Thompson's house. Late-night water usage, odd noises from her backyard, and even signs of digging, like she was trying to hide something. It didn't add up. Whatever she was doing, it wasn't just affecting her. It was as if she had something to hide, and I was getting closer to uncovering it. One evening, I decided to take a risk. I managed to get a look at the water meter in her backyard. It was late, around midnight, and the entire neighborhood was quiet. With a flashlight in hand, I crept over to the side of her fence and peered through a gap. I could see the pipes that led from her house were connected to something else, but I couldn't make out exactly what. Just as I was about to turn back, I heard footsteps approaching. My heart pounded. I quickly ducked behind some bushes, barely able to breathe. It was Mrs. Thompson. She was walking around the yard, acting like she was checking on something, but there was a nervous energy to her movements. She didn't know I was watching, but I knew I couldn't afford to get caught. The next day, I did a little more digging. I found a neighbor who had worked in plumbing for years and asked about the setup of her pipes. When I explained what I had seen, his face went pale. "Those pipes," he said slowly, "they're not just illegal, they're dangerous." It was becoming clear that whatever Mrs. Thompson was doing was much bigger than I'd realized. If the pipes were connected to the neighborhood's water supply in any way, it could lead to massive problems: flooding, contamination, you name it. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me. It was getting more urgent by the day. But with each move I made, it felt like she was one step ahead. I had to act quickly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Mrs. Thompson was watching me, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. The tension between us was building to an explosive point, and I knew the moment I made my next move, everything would change. The more I tried to piece everything together, the more tangled the situation became. But just when I thought things couldn't get any stranger, something happened that turned everything upside down. I was sitting in my living room, sorting through some old records, when I got an unexpected knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so when I opened it, I was taken aback to see a man in a suit standing there, holding an envelope. He introduced himself as a representative from the HOA and handed me the letter without saying much else. I quickly skimmed through it. It was a formal notice, claiming that I had violated HOA rules and that I was facing a fine for the pool drainage. My jaw dropped. I'd expected some kind of warning, but this was an official summons to attend a hearing. And the worst part, the hearing was scheduled for the next day. I tried to process it, but before I could react, the man handed me a second envelope. This one was sealed and stamped with a warning: confidential. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a document I hadn't expected, a full report on the water usage in the entire neighborhood. And guess what? It showed significant irregularities with Mrs. Thompson's property, as well as a spike in water consumption in the very section of the neighborhood I lived in. That's when it hit me. Mrs. Thompson hadn't just been covering up her illegal pipes. She was orchestrating something much bigger, and somehow she had involved the entire HOA in it. But who else knew about it? Was she in control of the whole system, or was she just a pawn in a much larger game? My pulse raced. The stakes had just been raised, and now I realized that what I was dealing with wasn't just about a simple neighborhood dispute. This was something far more dangerous, and I was in the middle of it. I didn't know who I could trust anymore, and the walls were closing in fast. I had no choice but to keep digging and pray that I could stay one step ahead. The hearing was a tense affair. I walked into the HOA office, my heart racing as I spotted Mrs. Thompson sitting at the head of the table, her usual smug expression replaced with something more guarded. I was ready to confront her, to finally expose what I had uncovered. But something felt off. As the meeting started, the HOA members all seemed unusually distant, their eyes avoiding mine, like they were all in on something I didn't know. When my turn came, I stood up and tried to lay out my case. I showed the water meter readings, the report I had gotten from the plumber, and explained how Mrs. Thompson's illegal pipe setup was impacting the entire neighborhood. I could feel the tension in the room, but Mrs. Thompson remained silent, only giving me the occasional sharp glance. But just as I thought I had the upper hand, the unexpected happened. Mrs. Thompson's lawyer, who had been sitting quietly in the back, suddenly stood up. "Before we proceed," he said, pulling out a document, "I'd like to submit this." It was a counter-report, one that appeared to have come from a trusted local authority, clearing Mrs. Thompson of any wrongdoing. It claimed that the water usage irregularities were simply a misinterpretation of the data. I stared in disbelief. How could she have turned this around so quickly? The meeting was going in her favor, and it felt like everything I had worked for was crumbling. But then, just as I was about to give up, I noticed something in the corner of the room. A small monitor was running a live feed of the meeting, and on the screen, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There, in the background, was a footage of Mrs.